Hi everybody, meteorologist Joe Cioffi here on this Thursday, April the 5th, 2018, as we approach the hour of 6 o'clock Eastern Time. Hope everybody had a great day. It was quite cold around here today. Temperatures didn't get much above the middle 40s. We had a howling wind this morning. The wind was busy all day, although it diminished somewhat as we headed into the late afternoon and evening hours. And now we look ahead to the conundrum that is the weekend forecast, because there are all sorts of things going on with respect to the upper air and weather models that have changed considerably since yesterday, and a little bit of confusion as far as how this is all going to evolve. And I'll get into that as we take a look at some of the newer weather models. At the moment, I've decided that I'm not changing my forecast that I had from yesterday, although it's a little bit hard to see how this is going to happen. This was my forecast from yesterday. I'm going to wait until tonight's model run to see what happens, but this is what I had. Potential for several slushy inches, lower amounts as you go to the north, higher amounts as you go to the south, and I had this band of 4+. I'm thinking this is going to be really, really tough to pull off based on what we are seeing at the moment. Honestly, to tell you the truth, judging from the sentiment that I've seen on here, on my Facebook page, I think that if we wind up with not much happening here, there won't be a lot of disappointment because it's just been too much. The extension of this colder weather into April, the snow, of course, many areas here getting anywhere between 65 and 75 inches on the season. The reporting stations have less, not all, some actually do have numbers in the 60s, but it's been a little hard to take. The cold started early in December, and now we had that warm February, and then March turned out to be just an incredible month with 4 nor'easters, and here we are in April, and we're still dealing with this issue. Now, this is for tomorrow morning when we have a bit of a warm front coming through, and I think there's still a chance that there could be a burst of snow that leaves a quick coating to maybe an inch or so in the areas to the north of the black line, and maybe a little bit higher in northern Pennsylvania, and as you head north up into the Hudson Valley and northern Connecticut, maybe some 1 to 2 inch amounts, the odd isolated 3-inch amount, maybe in elevated areas. I think this is going to be also, there's going to be some elevation driven snowfall, such as it will be for the morning. Along the immediate coast, it's just mainly going to be some rain showers. This will be around daybreak on Friday till about 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. Let's bring up this evening's watches and warnings and everything else that's going on as we prepare our way toward the weekend. Now, we do have winter storm watches up for parts of southern Ohio, that small area in western West Virginia, much of Kentucky, southern Indiana, southern Illinois. To the west of that, in the dark blue, I guess that is, or very dark purple, that is, those are freeze watches, I believe. Let me double check and make sure they're not freeze warnings. But those certainly related to the cold weather that we're dealing with here. Those are freeze warnings, and the lighter blue is a freeze watch. I don't often pay attention to those things, but for farmers and for those involved in the growing season, they are certainly critical, being that we're now into the spring and some early planting has occurred. We are seeing the importance of these freeze watches. So to the north and west of there, we've got winter weather advisories up in Nebraska with winter storm warnings in the northwestern corner, parts of southwestern South Dakota, and in through eastern Wyoming. Also some more winter storm warnings up for the northern Rockies up in Montana. That seems to be endless, by the way. It seems like they've been under a perpetual winter storm warning for months. Meanwhile, out in the west, we have this major storm that's off the coast of Oregon, and that's bringing heavy rains into California. So we've got flood watches up for northeastern and north central California northward, various flood advisories going northward from there, various wind advisories and high wind warnings up for parts of coastal Oregon. Now, let's, at this point, I want to go to the satellite view here of my area. Been, considering that we are at April the 5th, the lake effect activity that we've had since yesterday afternoon has been nothing short of amazing, and it's actually still continuing here with that flow off the lakes. You can start to see it weakening, though. You notice how the plumes kind of thin out here in western Pennsylvania. That is the wind direction changing, and this next weather system approaching that's going to turn the wind more southwest. So this looks like the last of the lake effect snow showers that have been streaming eastward. It was really impressive to look late yesterday, last night, and even this morning on the radars. They were to watch this lake effect action, which was considerable given the time of year. Being that this is April 5th, but the lakes are unfrozen. The warm temperatures of February and March, the lakes are all unfrozen now, of course, and with that cold air coming over the lakes, we had some pretty interesting lake effect action for early April. As far as severe weather is concerned, there is no organized severe weather threats. The Storm Prediction Center not worried about anything this evening other than a small area of general thunderstorms in East Texas, western Louisiana, and parts of Arkansas and Oklahoma, and that's it. We've got that rain coming into the west, but it's really pretty quiet on the thunderstorm front. And with respect to the radars here in the northeast, to just show you real quick too, very quiet, except for the fact that we still have these lake effect snow showers coming off Lake Erie and western parts of Lake Ontario. The snow is actually shifted a bit further south today, but this too will diminish and disappear as that next weather system starts to do its thing. So let's look now at what we are expecting going forward. I have to admit I'm just get a little bit confused, but as I was watching these models change over the course of the last 24 hours with respect to how they were seeing the flow in the upper atmosphere, the thing that I want to start off with first is I'm going to bring up the upper air jet stream for the GFS model, and we'll go to the wide North America view, because I think where the issue lies now is actually in yesterday's storm system, which you can see it here is a wrapped up upper low in Labrador. One of the things that's changed is that that storm's strength has been underplayed to some degree by the models, and it, in my view, has made this northern jet stream that is rotating around it and moving into the Great Lakes and Northeast a much more dominant player here. So you don't have as sharp a trough. The shortwave energy that's in the southern part of this trough almost gets lost. This is so strong and so overwhelming that it kind of squashes everything, and I think that's why models have backed off and even changed how this is all going to happen. And I'll show you on the NAM, because the NAM reflects that pretty well, as does the GFS. Here's that other wrapped up system off the Pacific Northwest coast, the ridge that's in the middle. But again, this trough is so broad and so dominant with this northern part of the jet stream, just kind of overwhelms everything and suppresses. So you really can't get very much from that. And it, even with the second system for Monday night and Tuesday, it's kind of backed away in terms of the strength of the trough. We were dealing with a fairly dynamic looking upper air back about 3 or 4 days ago, and it's really sort of evolved into this. which is, nothing to write home about. It's a fairly decent trough that's swinging around. The ridge in the west is flying up and fairly strong, but I'm not so sure how much you're going to be able to do with this because the trough stays relatively broad. It doesn't sharpen up, and the reason for that is that there's already more energy coming down and around, so there's only a limited amount of room. But I honestly, I haven't really given that system for early next week a lot of thought at this point. Just kind of been focused on the system that has been front and center. So we'll jump to the NAM model, and I didn't even read, oh, this is on climatology. Okay, never mind. I was just kind of looking for something else. I didn't realize that they had this sector even available. But I want to go to the U.S. Okay, so here we go with the NAM. You know what? Let me just check that one more time. That must be a new addition that they added this. I'm going to stick with this. This is very interesting that we can now see this view on the NAM up in the polar regions. I was never able to. I think they must have just added that geographic area to the map base. Thank you, Levi Cowan, Tropical Tidbits. So here's the NAM's picture for Saturday. You can't even find that southern system. It's just gets lost. Again, that northern jet just overwhelms everything, and the trough is just basically I guess a big duh, and that's it. And you can start to see the energy coming around for Monday with the next weather system. But as I said a little while ago, haven't really been paying too much attention to that. So we'll put the precip on. Hang on. Let's get the rain and snow and go back to the beginning. The major storm in the west, of course, is coming inland. So here's the situation for late tonight and tomorrow for my neck of the woods. You can see that there's low pressure that develops in the Great Lakes, nothing especially strong. Big high coming down out of Canada with more cold air. And there's your low in North Texas with showers across Oklahoma, back through Arkansas, northern Mississippi, and northern Alabama. Some snow up through Nebraska, where we have the winter storm warnings and the winter weather advisories up. Well, that low is going to be coming east. The system in the northeast, quick burst of snow or rain in the morning for a couple of hours, that lifts up and moves out. Now, the cold front that comes through with this extends back to the wave that's down in southern Arkansas, but notice that it's so flat. Hardly anything really comes out, so that what you wind up with is a weak wave that runs out on the cold front. So you see a changeover to snow late Friday night, early Saturday morning for a handful of hours, and then it's done. It's gone. This is such a change from a couple of days ago. Let me just go back. I could go back 5 or 6 runs, and you can see the big difference in the amount of moisture and in the strength of the wave as it's moving eastward. I'll go back even further. This was, okay, so this didn't actually go out far enough. I went back a little bit too far. But you get the idea here, folks. It's really changed considerably over the last several runs. Here's for Saturday morning, and I'm going to go close up. I'm not on. Oh, no wonder I can see what I was doing. I apologize for that, folks. Hang on a second. Oh boy, shows you that I need a vacation. But thank you, Levi Cowan, anyway. I mistakenly had on the 32 kilometer instead of the 12 kilometer, but forgive me. But you'll get the idea here is pretty much the same. I knew something started looking weird here when I went to the surface map. But no matter. There's your wave that comes out. and again, by Saturday morning, it's so flat and so underdeveloped. And there you get just a brief period of snow on the northern edge of it, and that's it. And there's some leftover energy that winds up as a second wave comes out off the Carolinas during Saturday night, but who cares? That's going way out. Now here comes that next one as we look ahead to Monday. But let me just go close up on the northeast, and we'll bring you back to Saturday morning. So here's that first burst tomorrow morning. I think there could be a quick coating to an inch in north and west of the coast, and especially in elevated areas. It's very fast and no big deal. But here is Saturday morning, okay, and we'll go back a couple of runs because you can see where how the trend has been. Here's the run from earlier today versus the new run. So actually the new run is a shade further north than the old run, which was way further north than the run from overnight, which was so incredibly suppressed. And then it started, and then you go back to 4 runs ago. This is what we were looking at at 0Z last night, which started that kind of suppressed look to it, slowly but surely. And here's the run before that. So what an incredible difference. So here is yesterday's run from midday on the NAM. Okay, again, this is for Saturday morning. Look at the difference as we go forward in the next 5 or 6 runs, how it changes. And that suppression to the south, then it kind of inches back up to the north. But the whole character of all this has changed. So basically what will happen is that there'll be a changeover to snow maybe about 3 or 4 a.m. It snows for about 3 or 4 hours. If it snows hard enough while it's still dark, you could put down a slushy coating to an inch or 2. I don't even know that you have time to put down anything more than that, because after we're through this period, by 11 o'clock in the morning, it's over with in New York City, most of Long Island, and through the northernmost areas as far north as the precip gets, which isn't very far. Still going on in central and south Jersey, south of 195, but right after lunchtime, it's over with there too. And the snow amounts that the model generates is, relatively minimal here. I mean, several inches in some places, 2 or 3 inches, big deal. And look at these holes that it shows where nothing. Some of this, by the way, you got to be careful because some of this is from whatever falls tomorrow, and some of it is with the second system. So there's a little bit of, conflict there. The 2 weather systems at once, that you're getting double numbers, but I'm just not impressed by this at all at this point. And as I said, I really kind of hope it goes away. The new GFS is really no different. Amounts not really all that impressive in terms of total snowfall. A coating to an inch or 2, maybe a little bit higher in some elevated areas, but it's nothing like it was when we go back a bunch of runs here where we see the trend in the snowfall maps going forward. So I've actually rolled back to April 3rd, and this is now the morning run of April the 3rd. So here's the here we go forward. You can see how the snow maps have changed. This run was yesterday's, which was very bullish with its snow outlook, and since then, notice south, less. I think we have to respect that with regards to what's going on. The full eastern U.S. view in terms of snowfall for the areas, even in the areas where they're under a winter storm watch, you wonder whether those watches are going to come down, because the amount of snow being generated here is nothing like what was being produced back 3 or 4 days ago. Basically a coating to a couple of inches being indicated. I don't know. It's hard for me to really kind of justify anything substantial, given the way this has changed in terms of the overall look. Here's the west, by the way, on the GFS. The snowfall over the next few days. Not too much up in the mountains in California and on up into Oregon and Washington. It's really mostly concentrated in the northern and even down into the central Rockies, where we're seeing some hefty snow amounts. And there you have a little bit of an additional stripe of snow that extends its way across the northern plains. So that's it, folks. It's just not working for me with regards to getting too worked up over this. Unless there's a radical change in what the models are showing, I can't really be that bullish with regards to the snow amounts. So if tonight's run series comes in and lowers numbers again, you can bet your bottom dollar that I'm going to be lowering my numbers as well. So just to review, this is the map that I had yesterday, which I'm holding on for one more run before I knock things down. This happened too many times this winter, by the way, where we wound up shifting back northwest at the last minute. So I just figured I'm getting kind of a free pass, I guess, because everybody's had so much snow that if this winds up not happening, I doubt I'm going to get anybody complaining about my forecast ability when I put this out yesterday. So I'm just going to stick with it for at least a few more hours, and then maybe tonight for tomorrow morning I'll take the numbers down. The new NAM, by the way, I saw that there was a question there from Sean Gordon. The new NAM starts its cycle at about 10 o'clock. Actually, it really sometimes it starts as early as 9:50, but it's not done until about 10:50. So we've got some waiting to do with regards to that. Nice to see everybody on board. Franklin Taylor, how much rain have you gotten in Arkansas with some of the severe weather you'd have in the last couple of days? I'd be curious to know. Dio Nankamar, the models might change tomorrow again. Well, they could. It's hard for me to see how, they all have this suppressed look. And by the way, the European model, which I know has not worked well, but it was one of the first models to start going south with this. And today's European model hardly has a flake or an ice pellet here Friday night into Saturday morning. It has everything basically from Cape May southward, and even there, it doesn't really show a whole heck of a lot. But maybe the European is finally woken up. I don't know, but we'll wait till tonight, and I'll make a decision at that point. LeBron fan, thank you, by the way, for the very kind words. I really appreciate it very much. Stephen Franco, good to see you here. Gary Vetsus. I hope you had, by the way, if this winds up being the last real threat, it will. I hope your winter snowfall was adequate enough for you up in West Passaic. You didn't do well early on, but you certainly played catch up and went and then some during the month of March. Palette, a video of Lake Ontario yesterday. The winds were so strong it looked like the ocean. I did too. I actually have a friend of mine who lives up in upstate New York, in the Pulaski Watertown area, and he put up some videos of those waves crashing on Lake Ontario. They were impressive. Lake Ontario is quite beautiful. If you've never been up to the shores there, and the fishing up there is great, by the way. If you're a fisherman, you need to do the tributaries, fish the tribs in upstate New York. They are just gorgeous and a beautiful experience. But that lake can get pretty rough sometimes. Just running through all your words tonight. Daniello, I wouldn't rule out some more adjustments and change, but I'm kind of thinking that I'm leaning now to the idea that this is really going to amount to next to nothing, which is what I want. I don't want anything to happen this weekend. I'm tired, so I will not be heartbroken, as Anthony Orr just put it. Definitely not. Magnet Fishing Adventure TV 70s by Friday the 13th, maybe. Well, we do have a warm-up coming for possibly for that weekend. Looked like there was going to be a ridge popping up in the east, but we'll keep our fingers crossed that that idea holds on. If it does warm up, I don't know that it'll be anything more than a day or two. That we should at least be able to get back into the 60s with not much effort. And I know Nick Cortese wants me to wave my spring magic wand and make things warm. It's going to take time to get out of this pattern. We will eventually. We've actually, if you want to count this beginning back at the end of February, we've been in this pattern now for a good 5.5, almost 6 weeks. Usually 6 to 8 weeks is about as long as patterns hold, and then they change into something. So I would suspect that we are probably going to see some kind of shift over the next week or two. Let's hope so, because I'm done. Let's see. Sean Gordon, what really makes the snow not want to penetrate into the cold air compared to a couple of days ago when there was a lot more snow north of the rain and not just being pushed up? I understand what you're getting at. Big difference in the synoptic pattern here from what we saw a couple of days ago. The one on Monday had a very distinct wave and a very distinct shortwave trough that moved along. When we looked at the upper air with this one, that's what it looked like a couple of days ago, something very, very similar. But now, because that northern part of the jet stream is basically so strong and so overwhelming that it's the system that is actually coming out from the south is broken up into pieces. It's getting squashed. It's very unimpressive. It doesn't have a character of its own in a sense. So the overwhelming dry cold air, it's kind of like what happens sometimes in the dead of winter when you have so much cold air around that weather systems remain rather weak. The flow is very fast. There just isn't enough room, and I think that's what this has evolved into. We don't have a good, solid shortwave that's coming out. Instead of coming out as one strong piece, it's coming out in broken pieces, and as a result, you have a much weaker precipitation field that can't manage to penetrate far enough north into the cold air. These spring snow events, do the tops of skyscrapers get more snow than on the ground? Good question. I will tell you this, over the years, that in cases where we were sort of on a borderline rain-snow line situation, having worked in Manhattan, there have been times in the building I worked in has a camera up on the 25th or 26th floor, and we also had one camera up on the Citicorp tower, which I believe was about 500 or 600 feet up. I'm not 100. I think I think it was 500 feet up, and there were times where in the in weather events, sometimes in the winter or even in late season events, you would look at that camera and it would be snowing at 500 feet or higher. I mean, really, really snowing hard. And then down at ground level, those snowflakes would just melt so quickly and they would just be plain rain. So, it can happen that way, where you get to see the snow up at the up on the skyscrapers at 500 feet, or on the Empire State Building, which is over 1,000 feet, and then down at the ground, it's all rain. I know, Nick Cortese, you want 103 degrees. I understand, in July and August. Why anybody would want it that hot is beyond me. And Aaron Raybear, this wind sucks to drive a truck in New York. Yes, the wind has been exceedingly busy. It was howling this morning. Apparently somebody objected to the fact, I really thought that this was brutally cold this morning for this time of year. It wasn't even so much the temperature. I was down near 30. It was 30 this morning, which is about 7 or 8 degrees below average, by the way. And there was a screaming 30-mile-an-hour wind, so the wind chills were down in the upper teens. I had to go out and get some firewood this morning because I was having work done on my heating system, and it was just awful outside. And I said that at least for this time of year, I would call it brutally cold. Someone objected to that, but then when we ran the numbers, and we're 15 degrees below normal for the daytime high. We should be up around 60. Instead, we only made it up to about 45 or 6 in some places. So if you want to seasonally adjust that and take a 15-degree temperature departure and move it back to mid-January, when the average high is about 36 or 7, you're talking about a day where the temperatures are basically not getting much above the upper teens and low 20s. I don't know about you, but for me, at least where I live, I would consider that at least very cold. And the fact that we had the kind of March and early April that we're having, and I want it to end so quickly, I called it brutally cold. So, you could argue that point with me, but I'm sorry, I was cold this morning. Let's see. Is there any to be concerned about the wave Sunday shifting west, like the December 9th wave? It just seems too important to ignore. I don't think so, Joshua, because the flow is too flat. Everything seems to want to just move more west to east. There's not a whole lot there to cause that flow to back to more southwest, which might bring it up a little bit further to the north. But I'm kind of, I would lean against it given the very fast flow that we have in the atmosphere. All right, folks, going to call it a night. A little bit tired here this week as we wind things down. Just want to tell you at 9:15 tonight on Facebook, meteorologist Joe Cioffi. It's the Joe Rayo Joe Cioffi Show, which, by the way, I've been able to upload onto my YouTube channel before 10 o'clock. Hopefully, I'll be able to do that again. So if you can't make it to the Facebook page, you can watch the show on my YouTube channel. Again, once I upload it. If I don't make it by 10, then it won't be uploaded until a little bit closer to midnight because I have to drive home and do it. And I've got some Facebook posts that you can check out too on meteorologistjoecioffi.com. Angry Ben on nycweathernow.com for the New York City perspective. And by the way, Sunday, to remind those of you on Long Island who are watching, I will be at the Deer Park Library at 1:30 in the afternoon till 2:45, and we'll be talking about our remarkable weather and the remarkable winter we had, and where we may be going forward over the next couple of months. Before too long, believe it or not, in 6 weeks, hurricane season starts in the Pacific. If that doesn't give you hope that warmer weather is coming, I don't know what is. But hurricane season starts in 6 weeks in the Pacific and in 8 weeks in the Atlantic. So, before you know it, we will be in June and we'll be out of this horror that we are experiencing here at the moment. Have a great evening, folks. We'll see you tomorrow.